The Stanford game it's like the one game version of my I don't understand the defense for the season. In this game, it was almost like sabotage or something.
Where are you on the did we waste Tyler Shough discussion?
No, he still did so many good things. This is not the Big East. They played some good ass teams this year who are also trying. And they lost by one score.
Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast here on the State of Louisville Podcast Network. I'm producer Keith. With me, as always, Vince Lococo, Matt McGavic, and of course, joining us on our off-season series, we have guest, host of The Drive on 93.9 The Ville, Monday to Friday, 3 to 6 p.m., Mark Ennis. Thank you for joining the program.
I'm happy. I love doing this. I enjoy doing this. So thank you guys for having me on here. This should be fun. I feel like I remember the last time we did this, we laughed a lot.
and that's the best content, right? Stuff you can relate about and, have a few jokes. And Keith, I have to say this while it's fresh in my mind. Every time you do the intro now, it reminds me of Good Morning Vietnam.
I get Bruce Buffer every time in my head.
You know what? I'll take both of those. There was a comment on one of the recent YouTube videos that said I looked like the pro wrestler Chris Jericho and the lead singer of Corey Taylor. I think he was a lead singer of Slipknot, had a love child. And I'm like, maybe if both of them let themselves go, but then maybe.
To me, it's more like a Rob Van Dam with just a little bit heavier.
Right, you can say a lot a bit heavier.
Is that the best one, like the best comparison somebody's made for you? Because I get some worse. I get Frasier every once in a while, which I fuck that. But on the plus side, one time, like right in front of Angela, a lady was like, "Has anybody ever told you look like Jason Statham?" And I was like, "Okay, I could do worse than that."
Right.
I'm sure that was a nice little compliment.
We got the fuck out of there after that. We left.
What Jason Statham we talking? We talking like Hobbs and Shaw Statham, or we talking like Crank Jason Statham?
I think I take any of them.
Now, the worst one I ever got, this was probably about 5-6 years ago, back when I had short hair. Do any of you watch Futurama?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got Zap Brannigan.
I thought they were going to say Zoidberg.
Yeah, I got cooked there. But,
spirit is willing, but body
is spongy and bruised. So to get the trade back on the tracks, Mark, we're bringing you in. We're talking to some local guests, just going through the trials, tribulations, highs and lows of the last University of Louisville football season. So before we get too far into the season itself, what were some of your expectations for the squad going into the year? Did you see this potentially being a down year? Did you see it being a potential playoff team, or somewhere in the middle? I
was pretty optimistic about Tyler Shough, and so I thought 9-3, 10-2. I thought they'd get their share of kind of what we all consider kind of the 50-50 games. I thought it was actually going to be big picture, like really, really similar to Jeff's first year. I really thought they were going to be a defensive-minded team and running and that sort of thing. I didn't know that they were going to end up being as explosive as they were, or not very defensive-minded for a long time. I didn't know. I just didn't know that it was going to be that bad defensively. And guys, I'll be honest. Like, I still don't have like a firm grasp on what was wrong. Like, I don't get why they weren't better than they were.
Yeah, especially even because some of the crux of the issue was not even personnel or scheme to maybe an extent, but it was just simple communication. The staff and the players failed to truly grasp this new age of in-helmet comms and work out all the kinks,
which is not new. Like it's new for them,
right? Right.
You know, the NFL
Most of the staff's been on the
age.
Most of the staff's been on the NFL at some point.
What was the low watermark for me defensively? The SMU game, running guys on and off the field. Getting caught, you know, trying to do that sort of thing. Just very weird considering all the people that they brought back and all the continuity that they had to all of a sudden be very, very, very unable to get people in. And it's almost like sometimes you hear people say this with the basketball team that like the injuries, it was in the quote from that Borzello piece today where like the injuries fixed things for them because it set their lineup for them. On the basketball side. And I feel like on the football side, it was almost like Ron English was obsessed with subbing. He's like, I got all these guys and it'd be a waste if I didn't use them. And
got to make everyone happy.
Or something, or it's like it's an advantage. And we said it's an advantage and I've got to go with it. And then, you know, they streamlined the personnel and that sort of thing the last, third of the season. And it was a lot better. It was weird. It's almost like they were too cute with the substituting to where no one ever really got settled. No one ever really got in a rhythm or anything like that.
I mean, if you want to sub the guys, sub them by series. You know, if you want to sub them that much, just sub them by series. And I mean, that way, I mean, sometimes guys need to give up 5-10 yards to get in a groove, like to your point. I mean, they always talk about that first hit. You know, I didn't wake up till that first hit. Some of those guys need to get that first hit, that first play, and then they're going. So
you mentioned the continuity on the defense. Do you think it was sort of a looking back at 23, they weren't truly battle tested with any great offenses in 2023, and that sort of caused all of us to have heightened expectations going into 24? Because he did Notre Dame, not a great offense in 23.
Yeah. Well, and Sam Hartman, so even if it was good, it wasn't going to be good that day. Yeah, I definitely think they went, like, it wasn't like the schedule like picked up one notch in terms of like the quality of the offenses that they played. It went up like 3 from Jeff's first year. You look at the quarterback play, it was awful from a lot of places. And Louisville really got to just fish in a barrel. They got to, even like you said, like the good teams like Notre Dame, like Sam Hartman was totally meaningless. But this year they played some of the best quarterbacks and some of the best offenses. It probably wasn't fair to expect the defense to be as productive given that. But I really don't think we understood just how good like Jennings was going to be or Cam Ward at Miami. Like we knew they'd be good, but like this was nuts. And so maybe we would have baked some of that in, but
I just wish we could have got more pass rush in that Miami game. You mentioned Cam Ward in that. If we could have got more of a push, who knows what kind of disruption we could have caused on defense. And I mean, we talked last episode with Biscuit about dumbing everything down, and it's like, why did we even change it to begin with? If it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, I'm of that mindset, just especially on defense. I mean, everything is the same. Cover 2 is always going to be 2, 3 is always going to be 3, and just let the guys get into a groove, knowing the opponent that they're about to face.
And I thought the Miami game in particular was really frustrating because it was like, we're getting murdered. Can we at least shoot back? Like, instead of just sitting here and rushing 2.5 and watching him just stand there and finally decide where to throw and then having him make amazing throws repeatedly. Like, can we, like, if they're going to do this anyway, how about we just go for broke? And it was like a torture to just sort of watch him be calm.
And while we're kind of on this subject of, you know, the coaching staff's approach, even though that's more of a defensive thing, what are some of your thoughts? Because I know what mine are. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are of Jeff Brom now as opposed to, say, the end of last season. Because I mean, during the 23 season, obviously he's a fantastic coach. I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to disparage him at all. But it seems like in the 23 season, there were more so of those moments where we see a play call or we see a play design or something of that nature, and we go, that's Jeff Brom cooking right there. Jeff Brom's in his bag. And in the first half of the season, he was kind of Satterfield-esque. He wasn't very vanilla at times. He didn't break out the... I know you
mute him.
but you know what I mean. Like he
I do.
Wasn't very. He's a risk taking type of coach, but he didn't really take a bunch of quote unquote risks or really seem like he was, quote, in his bag until maybe the midway point of the season.
I think Jeff did a really good job this year still. I didn't think, but I think really, and I don't know if this, okay, I think Colin Lacey messed with him.
Yeah.
Opting out.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think it took him a long time. Like, how would you like to go back to the early part of the year and have him just be like, just play the running backs that are good? Like, just play the two freshmen.
Just run the football, trust me.
but I'm talking about, like, don't give it to the, these other guys. Like, just stick with the two freshmen primarily.
Yeah.
Because, like, even Notre Dame, like, you're trying to attack the edge on fourth down, with a running back that's as old as me. Like, right? We remember this, right? And they get stopped and that stuff. Yeah. Like, once they settled primarily on Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, like, they all of a sudden they looked a lot smarter offensively because of what those guys really opened up for them. And I give Jeff a ton of credit. I don't think this is the way he loves to play, but he's adaptable, and if they've got to run it first and primarily and build it off of that, like then we're going to do it and be really good at it. We're going to tear you up with it.
I think he's perfectly fine doing the play action stuff.
You're right about that.
And hitting something deep off of play action. I mean, not just a run pass like we used to see with Charlie, but a run on second down or a play action on second down, take a shot type deal.
Yeah.
I think he's more than comfortable doing that. I love the little tight end come underneath the linebackers, come up down the seam where they have a post coming off the backside. I mean, that's one of like Jeff Brom's beautiful play designs that he has. So, I mean,
from the scheming aspect, and even like one of my biggest concerns when Coach Brom was coming in, when we brought him in from Purdue, was how conservative he was with a lot of like late down decisions, like down and distance. Oh, it's 4th and 2. We're at the 50-yard line. You'd see him punting a lot at Purdue, or at like the 35, same scenario, just opting for field goals. I feel like we're seeing a lot more aggressive of a Jeff Brom at Louisville. Maybe that's just me imagining it, but I feel like we went for a lot more 4th downs last season than he had when he was at Purdue. It's just the only knock I have at this point is just clock management and high school recruiting.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like the 4th down stuff, I think it's a couple things. One, I think the margins are this year especially were pretty small. And winning every game, I think he's just sort of looking for every little thing they could get. It's just that I think like the failures on 4th down were pretty spectacular. Like they were crucial moments. You don't get points on that Notre Dame drive. I feel like that would have changed everything if they do in that game. That sort of thing. But also with the 4th down stuff with them, I underestimated the extent to which Jeff was a vibes guy. And what I mean by that is the 4th down decisions. It's not like a decision tree. I think
there's no analytic guy in his ear.
Now he probably had. Like I'm sure they. I'm not saying that
it's on his little play sheet somewhere. It's probably the right hand corner where they have like a go for it on 4th and 2.
It's. I think analytics are one of several data points that Jeff considers. But I think really maybe what I've learned most out of the last couple of years is Jeff's got way more Howard in him than Bobby in him, and Howard was a vibes guy. This is about manhood and that sort of thing. And here's a chance to send a message and all that. And that matters to Jeff way, way more than I thought when they hired him. But it's okay. Like it's a way of being, make it work. And by and large, he does. But like that stuff, it took me a while to be like, I don't know about that one. And it was inconsistent. And that's because it felt different. And I didn't know he was like that.
It was just some of the nature of those 4th down calls is what really got me. Because I remember at some point during that stretch where they lost 3 of 4, he was like, yeah, we're not going to rush it up the middle on 4th and short anymore.
Yeah.
And then they proceeded to do that many more times, especially in the bowl game. And it came up no dice again. So the inconsistent nature is a little bit head scratching at times. But like you said, it really depends on the vibe or the flow or how things are going with, opening scripts or what's working, what's not, and all that good stuff.
I mean, look at the Top Gun video he did for the 23 season. We already knew Jeff Brom, certified vibes guy.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
And to put a sort of bow, not complaining about the 4th down decision making here. Like, if anything, I was thrilled to see it. But Yeah, would like to see different play calls, and honestly just would have liked to see the ball in Isaac and Duke's hands earlier in the season, which the one that always has me kicking myself is the Notre Dame game.
Yep.
How different is that if we're feeding the studs as opposed to trying to work in the older guys? But while we're sort of in the realm of thinking about games like Notre Dame, like Miami, like SMU, what did you make of Louisville's losses this year? We feel free to talk about that game as well.
No, I'm just saying, there's just one specific game you left off right there. I'm laughing at why.
Well,
it's a different category.
I'm trying not to projectile vomit all over my microphone thinking about that game. Louisville as a team having three very close, well, all the losses were close game losses, and three of which were to playoff caliber teams. I think it's fair to say two were in the playoffs, and Miami was just as worthy as SMU, in my opinion. What do you think of the team and staff's ability to actually close out those games in the future to win those close games?
It doesn't like rattle me that they lost those games, because like they closed the shit out of the Clemson game, right? Like they did that sort, like, so they did it well as well. They didn't just lose every one of those where it was so crucial. Like, we got to send a message here. Like, they just shut Clemson down in the fourth quarter, which was awesome. The Stanford game it's like the one game version of my I don't understand the defense for the season. In this game, it was almost like sabotage or something. Like the stuff that happened in the last couple of possessions. And this is where Jeff, being a vibes guy, gets him, I think, sometimes, because I think he connects with these guys emotionally. It's one of his things. Like, it's what makes him, it's the, let's play football and all that street fight between the whistles and breaking chairs and all that shit. Like, he connects, but sometimes what he's connected and it's crazy. Like, I think he frags his own guys sometimes. I really do. I think he is so intense that he gives everybody the jitters, and they melted in the fourth quarter of that Stanford game, and they did it both ways. Like, it was on offense too. There's some really questionable stuff on offense too. This is where I hope he's super reflective in the offseason, because like that, it's the thing that holds him back. Yeah, to the extent that he's held back at all. Like, let's be real. But like, if you were like an FBI profile on every coach, like a strengths, weaknesses, whatever, like that's his weakness. Is he's so far amped above the guys sometimes that they're not sharp, but not because they don't care. They're just, it's overdone.
Yeah, they're over.
Bobby was like that. Bobby was like that too.
Yeah, and I remember talking with you on the show. I think there's like a week after this, in the few days after the Stanford game. I mean, heading into it, at least there was a storyline of, post big game Jeff Brom, or out of bye week Jeff Brom. He tends to struggle a little bit.
And the Stanford game was both.
Yeah, but the thing was, okay, you're at least going into a game where he has the opportunity to shake both of those narratives in a grandiose way. He instead calcified those narratives in grandiose ways. Like that Stanford team then proceeded to lose to Cal and then San Jose or San Diego State. Like that Stanford team was
one is not better than the other.
No,
I'm just choosing to believe that was the Stanford team that showed up against Syracuse early in the season. I gotta hang on to something.
It's still a bad loss. Syracuse shouldn't have lost that game either.
I kind of agree with Mark a little bit on them being a little amped up, because I'm sure the guys see, it's not like the guys aren't on social media and stuff, like, right. and they don't see it either. Us talking about it, I mean, it is a narrative. To Matt's point, I mean, all of that is true, and I'm sure that affects the players to some point, to some extent as well. And to say that's not in the back of their head, probably towards the end of the game, would be probably foolish. Like, oh, I have to go make this play. I have to go do this. I have to go do that.
Vince,
Can't lose this.
I'm thinking of an idea that's kind of inspired by you, Vince. What if we just, as Louisville media, agree we're not going to talk about it after a big game next year? Just business as usual.
Yeah.
Bye week? What bye week? They played a secret game.
Exactly.
We do need talking points. I mean,
the worst part about it, and Matt, calcified's like a good word for it, is like it's entrenched now. the fear of the game after the game, and it's like a Pyrrhic victory. You know, it's like you hire Jeff Brom because you're going to go beat Clemson, and you will.
Yeah.
Or you're going to beat Notre Dame with the whole world watching, but you are going to lose to Pitt. And you are going to lose to Stanford. Like, and it's like, do you want neither? Like, I'll take both over neither. But now I think, like, I'm worried that people are going to be suspicious of success neek year. Like, they beat somebody good, people are going to be like, well, we're cooked next week. I hate that. And the Stanford game was just, it was Stanford. It was week off. Like, we could put all this behind us. And instead, they did what they did.
Yeah. I mean, it was a place where Stephen Herron straight up called it the library because no one goes there.
Yes.
Yeah.
No one watches the games there anymore because Stanford is so bad.
Yeah.
They lost at the library.
Now, let me give Jeff his props, though, after that. Because I think if we're all being honest, I'm sure on your podcast, I know on the show with the Texas callers, social media, whatever, there was a lot of fear after the Stanford game that, like, here we go again. We're going to lose out. Like last year, these guys are checked out and frazzled and all that stuff. And Pitt, if you had let them, I think could have made that really ugly. And instead, they crushed them. And the extent to which they got up off the mat and did just the opposite, beat Pitt, beat the hell out of Pitt, beat the hell out of Kentucky, win the bowl game with a bunch of backups in there. I think he deserves all the credit in the world for keeping this team together. Maybe even better than he did at the end of last year when they went to the ACC championship game. This team was more dialed in at the end than that team was.
To that point, what do you think of the development of the offense this year with Shough, Brooks, Bell, Brown, Watson? I mean, everybody excelled this season.
Yeah, it was we're going to appreciate – okay, let me back up. And I want to say this. I hope everybody listening.
I think I agree with you with what you're about to say.
This is not about Miller Moss at all. We're going to miss Tyler Shough. And that's a statement about Tyler Shough. He was better than you think he is right now. Like, whatever you remember, he was probably a little bit better than that. And, Matt, I've mentioned this with you. You watch the NFL, the best court, you can tell when, like, the backup's in or a guy that shouldn't be the starter is in, because he's not that he can't make a throw down the field. He's got to throw it 4 yards downfield, but all the way to the sideline. And in the NFL,
Matt doesn't just watch the NFL; he watches the Colts.
So
he knows that quarterback play.
You know that a trainer's about to catch that ball if it's the wrong guy throwing it, right? And I thought with Tyler, he was on the money with all of those throws. And there's so much hidden yardage and converted third downs and all that stuff on his just unrelenting accuracy all the time on that stuff, on top of all the good stuff. That throw against Notre Dame is as good a throw as you'll ever see.
Yeah.
That off-balance one, like, that's awesome. But the fact that he was just so stoic and consistent, it was like a jugs machine, just like tossing those balls out there. But it's the stuff that drives you nuts when it doesn't, when a guy can't do that stuff.
Well, we dealt with it for years with Malik and even Lamar to an extent. I mean,
Malik couldn't throw it to the running back out of the backfield for nothing.
No.
One of the
Lamar wouldn't get it either.
One of the most underrated aspects of Shough's game, and Matt, I'm sorry if I'm stepping on the stat you were about to pull up, was that not just was he able to get the ball out to the skill players, he could get rid of the ball when needed. And looking at pass protection and sack rate numbers, Louisville's offensive line, which just looking at the players, I don't think any of us would say 2024's offensive line was objectively better than 2023's when it comes to the guys on the line. Yet, with the man under center, Shough was able to improve the O-line from 93rd in the country in the 23 to 15th, only giving up, I believe, 14 or 15 sacks on the season.
Wild.
Insane.
And they played a bunch of good-ass defenses, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aggressive defenses, I should say.
I hate what I'm about to say because it feels like we always bring up more ways to just continually shit on Jack Plummer.
I mean, like,
but
we talk about it all the time. Don't make the decisions it's not like he wasn't given an opportunity. Like, the opportunity was there for you to do and excel. I mean, you already had the playbook before any of these guys thought about having the Jeff.
I know.
How was he the hesitant guy, right?
Yeah. But that being said, Shough's pocket awareness was on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of Jack Plummer's. Jack Plummer, you get in a sixth-year senior, you expect him to at least have a command of the offense, but at least know when to get the ball out, know when to escape away from pressure. That was not the case. Tyler Shough was that and more. I mean, yeah, the offensive line had a fantastic year and did a fantastic job of not allowing sacks, but part of that also rested on the shoulders of Tyler Shough and his ability to know when to get the ball out, know how to navigate the pocket away from pressure, know when to roll out, know when to like stand firm and climb the pocket. Like all those things combine and work together to create an offensive system that isn't really conducive to giving up a lot of sacks.
So
yeah, they didn't lose one game this year because of him. Not one.
Do y'all think that we got the better version of Tyler Shough because of the injuries and he wasn't so gung-ho to run the football all the time as a quarterback? Maybe he was forced himself to become more of a pocket passer, a better pocket awareness, all of that?
I think probably the best version, the best throwing version of him, absolutely. The best player, probably not, because we saw plenty at Texas Tech. I mean, the man can use his legs for sure, but I mean, you don't want him to get hurt again so that you can, actually have your quarterback.
I think you're onto something. The fact that like they made it clear, stop, don't run, don't do that. And you remember the story about Lamar and spring practice after his freshman year, where they were like, "You can't run. If you run, we're blowing the whistle. Stop."
I was there. That was
okay.
Yeah,
so
you
know.
And it was pretty funny because he'd throw his arms up in the air and he'd be pissed. It's
right.
Like
and now he's amazing. And that's where it starts. And I wonder if there was some of that. The other thing I think Tyler deserves some real credit for is like he had great stats, efficiency. He didn't turn the ball over, all that stuff, but he was not timid.
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of quarterbacks who don't have interceptions because they don't try. Like they don't do anything risky. They take the checkdowns, all that sort of. And he did not play that way. He took shots downfield. He was aggressive throwing the ball and that sort of thing. He was really good. The retooling of the offense, you could tell like Jeff was like, we're not doing what we did last year. Like I'm gonna have somebody throw it to, and it worked. Like this was.
And even when he still had to revert back to the run, he was like, "Oh shit, I got two phenomenal running backs back here that are they're freshmen too. This is great."
in this, like in modern football, like how often do you get like big play running backs? But they were, and Isaac Brown started doing something almost immediately that reminded me of Jawar Jordan. If you go back and watch, like he breaks a lot of tackles by getting there faster than the person was ready for.
Yeah.
And making a safety take a terrible angle because you've underestimated his speed or whatever. And I felt like he ran by guys that were in great position all the time. And it's instinctive. You can't teach that, but it made them, what is for a normal running back is a 10-yard run is a 43-yard run. And they did that all second half of the season.
So are you saying he's deceptively quick?
well, I mean, we've been able to see that.
He's the first actually quick person described as deceptively quick.
So
we've been able to see the improvement of that position from Brandon Radcliffe on to Javian Hawkins. You're just gradually seeing we're getting more and more home run type running backs each year.
So
and plus, not only that, I mean, he's a speed guy. His game is predicated on speed, elusiveness, but there were a couple games where he put on display some physicality and ability to run in between the tackles, and he slowly became a more complete back as the year went on. Now, granted, he still ran a lot of his runs like on outside runs and outside zones and whatnot, but I mean, towards the final 3 or 4 games or so, there were some runs where he really had to like lower his shoulder and deliver some contact too.
I would love to actually chart this out or have somebody else do it. I don't want to do it. But my impression is I don't remember Jeff's teams at Western or Purdue being nearly as not reliant, but like successful in implementing outside zone running. Like his Purdue
teams. If you go back to Ace Wells, that's probably the one at Western Kentucky that would be the most comparable to the guys we have now, with Jeff just being able to utilize the run game the most efficient.
But even then, it wasn't like outside zone. Like it's
no,
odd.
it was a lot of counter and power game and stuff like that. But I
he
mean,
loves
still,
it
that's
now.
your
He's a
only
believer
comparison,
now.
though, right? I mean, it's the easiest. It's in my opinion, it's the easiest way to block. You get all
100%. It's the easiest
on the same track, and they just climb up. And I mean,
I can
You
tell
know
you.
what I love about it though? I love it though. Is like with running backs, it's like in those systems, it's like let's see if he has the gift.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like
if you could
they
see
either
it,
see it or they don't, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So coming into the year, obviously the freshman running backs were phenomenal surprises. So I'm going to take Brown and Watson off the board. Can't pick them. What players surprised you the most in a positive way? Pick one from the offensive, one from the defensive side of the ball. I can filibuster if you need to deliberate on the answer.
I mean, Ja'Cory Brooks was better than I expected.
Yeah, coming off the
and yeah, I've told this story before, but Aaron Suttles used to write for The Athletic, and now he is like the media arm for Alabama's Collective, like their 502 Circle.
Mm-hmm.
When Ja'Cory Brooks committed here, I just messaged him and I was like, "Hey, what can you tell me about this kid?" And he's like, "They love him. Everybody here loves him. He can't stay healthy, and he has no confidence. Saban is basically like broken him, by riding his ass. And he's like, if you can get him to stand up and stay on the field, just if you can keep him healthy and give him some confidence, he'll be really good." And he was better than that. I thought he was spectacular. Jeff's really good at getting offenses and wide receivers scheming them open and stuff. This guy is special. When you got a wide receiver, like he's not open, but yeah, he's open. It's fine. That stuff. He was so much better than I was expecting.
You don't have to scheme Ja'Cory Brooks open.
Right.
You just have him run the route tree. Just run the offense, run your route tree, and the kid finds his own way to get open. And with the wide receiver position, confidence is. I mean, that's everything for that position, as it is for every position and every aspect of life. But I mean, even more at that wide receiver position, being a 20-something-year-old kid.
It got to the point.
He catches it with. Sorry, catches it with his hands.
Yeah, and
wide receivers like when it's different, like those dudes, because I think a lot of guys are not confident they're going to catch it with their hands. But the guys who are like, "No, I'm totally going to catch this," like you could just see it, and he's like that. Like, I'll stab this ball out of the air and then I'm gone. And those guys are few and far between.
It eventually got to the point, I think it was probably the Notre Dame game the first time we saw it, where I dubbed it the Devontae Parker rule. If he's covered, he's open.
Yeah. Hey, let me add, by the end of the year, this is not true all year, but by the end of the year, I thought a lot more of Chris Bell than I did at the beginning of the year.
I was actually just about to say, like, basically taking that same question, talking about a guy who surprised you the most on offense, I was going to say Chris Bell. And to eloquently put it, as we said in a previous episode, he finally stopped being a dickhead.
Yeah.
He finally shored up those maturity issues that he had over the first two seasons, because I had seen it in practice. I saw it at Louisville's Pro Day last year when he was helping the guys out when he was helping Jack Plummer out when he was throwing. Like, he looked fantastic. I mean, he looked like a physical specimen. He looked like someone that, like, he
looks like AJ Brown, just like when you look at him.
We talked about it at the Pro Day, Matt. We were like, this looks great on air.
Yeah.
But by the Kentucky game, he knew he was a bully.
He finally was able to correct, like, in between the ears, and it panned out greatly on the football field. And if Colin Lacey wasn't coming back and there was some other, like, good, like, replacement level, like, starters, I'd still feel like relatively confident about the passing game just because of how Chris Bell looked this season.
I still like the fact that he can play into the heel role and control. There's nothing better than a guy that can play into the heel role, but be in control of your emotions and in control of the game. And I think that's really what Chris has honed in, which I
like
love.
a Jair Alexander.
yes, well, Jair was a lot of more like Case and Pryor. I feel like Jair was a lot into extracurriculars.
There aren't as many in football, but like the guy that you would fucking hate him if he played for somebody else.
Yeah.
And he is like that for sure.
So on the defensive side of the ball, like,
I don't have one.
So Renee Conga.
What about special teams, Mark?
They all surprised me. How's that?
I was pleasantly surprised by Rene Conga, and that might just be due to my own lack of expectations for him coming in. Like Jordan Girard, I watch too much CUSA football, so I saw what he was doing at FIU quite a bit. I had high expectations for him. I think everyone thought Thor Griffith was going to come in and be a rock star, and Rene Conga, we were just like, oh yeah, probably going to be a death piece ad. Who knows? And he just comes in and starts wrecking shit from day one.
Surprises. Conga was good. For the first half of the year, Tramel Logan was really nice. And I felt like he kind of tailed off in the second half of the year.
I think it was because of a lower body injury that kind of hampered him a little bit too. So that was more so. And while we're talking about defensive surprises, I know we're talking about it in a positive way, but in a negative way, I know like the cliched answer now is Ashton Gelati because his sack numbers went down. But I mean, like you just said, Keith, I'm sure all of us heading into the season expected massive things out of Thor Griffith.
Yeah.
Because of how highly touted of a prospect he was, how big of a deal it was to nab him away from Ohio State and Michigan. Like he could have gone literally anywhere in college football. That's how highly regarded of a prospect he was. And he chose Louisville. And over the first half of the year, he was, I don't want to say a complete non-factor, but he was not nearly the impactful player that he was supposed to be. And he did eventually come back around and make an impact down the stretch, but they could have used him like in that stretch where they lost 3 or 4. They could have used him to disrupt the pocket against guys like Jennings and Ward, like just any sort of disruption of the pocket.
Some pressure up the middle against Cam Moore would have been. I mean, pressure anywhere against Cam Moore would have been nice, but pressure up the middle would have been really nice to get him moving on the outside.
Also, you can't be mid when your fucking name is Thor.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And he was, if disappointments, I guess I could do. Like, that was one. I'll tell you what, it was never a big part of what they were doing or like the game plan or whatever. But like, I thought Stanquan Clark can really hit. Like, I thought he was super physical, short yards down and distance, forcing fumbles, stuff like that. I hope he's a really, really big part of what they do next year.
I want to see him get his conditioning up a little bit. I'm sure, like, he flies around to the football a lot, and I'm sure if I were to, like, actually sit down and watch every single game and watch his reps, you could really be able to tell where he's accelerating and decelerating, when he's loafing and when he's not loafing. And I just think that if he can go balls to the wall all 4 quarters, he can be a special, special football player.
I think the entire linebacking core probably needs to get the conditioning up a little bit, if anything. So it would, but no, hold on.
7-on-7 camp.
I know, but if anything, so that they can improve their ability to move around in zone when playing against the pass. Because I mean, over the last 2 seasons under Brom, it's proven that the linebacking core is fantastic against the run. Against quarterbacks dropping back in coverage, it's not that great. I mean, during the middle of the season, what was one of the big storylines with the defense? Middle of the field, wide open, all the time. Now, that did get slowly better towards the end of the season.
I see that quarterback draw against SMU like in my sleep, dude.
Oh, and the wheel routes with the linebackers, Matt. That's like, I mean, you want to talk about them in coverage. That was what we talked about on the show every single week.
I mean, wheel routes are probably single-handedly how Ben Perry lost his starting gig.
Yeah. I mean, and that's that's really surprising because he's a kid who you'd expect had a lot of speed coming down from the safety position, and you would expect him to have better eyes than what he had coming down from the safety position. But I guess a lot of times they talk about things moving too quick. I mean, obviously the further back you go, the longer you get to see the play develop in front of you. So Ben moving up in front probably affected how quick he was reading it, but he did it all last year. So I don't understand.
Having this whole conversation, if you think about it, wasn't the Boston College game like the whole season? Like, they won. Yeah. And they even won somewhat comfortably. But for about half that game, you're like, what the hell are we doing? And then the other half, you're like, this is awesome. But then all that really makes you do is be like, what was all of that?
Yeah.
Why was this not when it started the game.
Yeah, the first half was the SMU game. The second, it's like that. Yeah, it's the Boston College game was the whole year.
Actually, while we're summarizing the season, there are some people, like, there was a variation of expectations when it comes to record coming into the season, coming out of the season. What do you make of some of the people who are saying that, like, a 8-4 regular season, 9-4 finish was a disappointing year, knowing the wide receiver and quarterback tandem that we had, knowing that we had the running backs that we did? Like, where are you on the did we waste Tyler Shough discussion?
No, he still did so many good things. This is not the Big East. They played some good ass teams this year who are also trying. And they lost by one score. You know what I like? It's not. It'd be one thing, 8-4, and like you just got the shit kicked out of you a couple times. Oddly enough, that's what the basketball team is. Like, they're way better, but like they just been murdered a bunch of times in their losses. They almost beat 2.5 playoff teams. They were bad replays away from beating SMU and Miami.
They almost beat 2 playoff teams and a Pop-Tart.
I cannot see how you look at a year where you won 9 games, beat Kentucky handily, beat Clemson. The other team's trying too. And I feel like people who are just immediately are just like, we are Louisville and we should go this record. Like, are we going to talk about the other team who also thinks they should have that record?
Right.
Like, what are we doing? It could have been better. And this is a point I tried to make on the show a couple weeks ago, and I don't know how good I did at saying it, but like, I think they underachieved. But that's, you can't underachieve unless you achieve some things, right? Like, they didn't not achieve. They could have done more. You would have loved to have seen, to have gotten at least one of those games against the better teams that they played. But damn,
I mean, for anything, I mean, like you said, underachieved. But while they didn't go back to Charlotte, which I think was what a lot of people thought they could do, like I said, beat Clemson for the first time, first time, and they did it in Death Valley. They broke the losing streak to Kentucky. They ended the year on a 3-game winning streak and not a 3-game losing streak. I mean, granted, there are the 3 losses, but like you said, they're 2 playoff caliber teams by just 1 score. I mean, if you ask me if I was going to say if the season would be successful or failure, I would say successful. But I would also say that the season is more so defined as a what-if type season. Now, granted, what fan base can say that, cannot say that? But, I mean, you're playing 3 playoff caliber teams. You all lose by a touchdown. You win just one of those, you're probably in a very good spot to make the ACC championship. If you don't fuck up against Stanford, that's doubly sure.
How about you just don't tackle a guy out of bounds against Stanford? This is a 10-win season.
So if we're doing like the sports radio thing of like letter grade season, if we just don't have the fucking Stanford game, and that's what I dub it, the fucking Stanford game.
No, that's right.
It's say we just flip the result, we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, pull out a win. I'd say it's like an A- season. You lose a whole fucking letter grade because of the Stanford game though. Like B-. Sure. You lost to Stanford. Yeah.
I feel like this is just the question that we proposed at the end of the year last year of, would you take 10 wins or would you take the us beating Clemson and Kentucky, no ACC championship, and no better? I feel like this is just that situation, but we had to live it.
I'd have to go back and listen. I'd have to go back and listen to that episode because I'm pretty sure like that exact scenario was discussed.
Yeah, it's not like just us. I'm sure Mark and them talked about it on their show at some point of like, oh, would you rather take this or that on the year? And
so so Jeff was like, how about we'll have 2 seasons and I'll do both.
Yeah, I'll do both.
You can try them both on and tell me which one you like.
I'm just sitting here saying, can we flip-flop quarterbacks? And I mean, we're likely the year prior to that sitting in the college football playoffs with Tyler.
If they had beaten Stanford, we could have had sort of the best of both worlds because we wouldn't have had to actually play in the playoff, but we could have run our mouths nonstop that we should have been in there, and we would have killed all of you guys and all of this, because they would have been 9-3. They would have been like number 16 or 15 or something.
We'd be Lane Kiffin, is what you're saying?
Oh, we're peaking at the right time.
No,
that would have came out of my mouth.
He really believes they belong there. We would know we didn't belong there, but we could have at least had like plausibly made you think we thought we should be there.
Be like us and I think it was Mike Ryan on Levitard show, like the Syracuse argument. Like, yeah, Syracuse deserves to be up there.
Yeah. We would have had, what, 7-game winning streak at the end of the year or whatever it was. Clemson, Pitt, like all, it would have been.
That look real pretty.
Ideal. Yeah.
So, Vince, you mentioned flip-flopping quarterbacks. So, Tyler Shough, he's a 1-year guy, so it's sort of an unfair grading system. But where does he sort of rank with you in that Louisville hierarchy of quarterbacks, like the Redmonds, the Ragones, the Brom, Teddy, Lamar? Where's he sit?
Who's going first? This is me.
Oh,
yeah, you.
Oh, I thought you were asking Vinny for some reason.
No, you got it.
It's really hard because I think all of the guys we really like, we had more than 1 year. Virtually every one of them. There's very few that we've ever had just 1 year.
Malik, we had like 7.
God, no kidding, right? One long year with the draft. Above, like, he had a fantastic season. It doesn't feel right for me to be like above somebody that we all think super, super good, but he belongs up there with Teddy's 2012 season, or like he had an absolutely wonderful season against a worthy schedule. Like they played a bunch of really good teams, not just the 3 teams that were in the playoff or whatever, or almost in the playoff or whatever. Like Jacksonville State and Georgia Tech, like these were good teams.
Who's that guy that Reggie Bonifant was competing with back in like 2014?
Kyle
Bolin
and
Hunter Kent.
Was it
no.
Will? Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, like even Hunter, like he doesn't fall into those categories. You know what I mean?
He's above
like
that for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely above those, but he's not quite in the Louisville legend of Ragone, Redmond.
If they had 2 years of this kind of play, he's as good as
sign me up for
honestly
anybody who didn't run.
I feel like Bolin might be an appropriate tier just because everyone thinks of him fondly for him coming in and just kicking the dog shit out of Kentucky. So
I tell you guys, I sat in the press box one time and had a sincere argument with Rashawn Myers that he really, really wanted Kyle Bolin to play and not Lamar because it would allow Bobby to run his whole offense. And Rashawn was dead. And like that was a position that existed in 2015, early 2015.
I think Kyle would have told you that's probably crazy. But I mean, anything Kyle could do, Lamar could do, just a little bit better.
You ever stop and think about the fact that like they went up to Pitt, Kyle was awful, and they were down 42-7 at halftime.
Yeah,
and they almost came back and won that game just with Lamar playing only in the second half, and then they just started Kyle against Kentucky anyway, and then almost did it again. And then still beat Kentucky 41-17 or whatever it was with Lamar coming off the bench.
I mean, I remember I committed to Louisville that week, the week of that game. And I remember being at practice with Dave Bowler, just watching a extremely raw, like uncut Lamar Jackson, doesn't know any of the plays, is just out there BSing around at the pretty much. I mean, it was wild. It was like watching an organized backyard football game.
I do remember early in Lamar's career him saying, yeah, last year I didn't know what the down and distance was a lot of times. Remember like his freshman year, he'd be like, I was just so wide-eyed. I was just like, I don't know.
Right, it's a lot. It's a lot. A million things being thrown at him at one point. I mean, down in distance, I'd just be worried about catching the football.
Louisville's got a bunch of weird losses to Pitt. I was just thinking about this for some reason. Like over its history, like obviously last year, obnoxious, but like Charlie, the 2011 year, they go beat West Virginia and Andrew Johnson's, blowing kisses at the cheerleaders and all that, and then they came home and lost to Pitt. Remember that? That's the Call to Duty week. Remember that?
I hate Virginia for whatever reason. I always get a pit in my stomach for Virginia. Back whenever I was around like Seth Dawkins, him spiking the ball in the end zone in that rain game is just like ingrained in my head, and I'm like, oh my god, they've always got a shot. There's always a shot with Virginia.
I feel like I'm starting to get that vibe about Boston College now. Just like they're a
that.
spooky team.
Hopefully Matt's not listening. I don't know what's going on with this mic and camera right now, but hopefully he didn't hear you say that.
Yeah. Well, we've taken a little bit of time to recap and look at the season that what was. So we're not going to get full blown into prognostication for the future, but with Louisville having a big transfer portal haul, not necessarily what they've previously had, do you see any spots that you are really excited about, like where you think, oh, we got better? Anywhere that got worse? What are your biggest optimisms and concerns so far with the portal?
I'm still not sure about the other receiver opposite Chris Bell, because I assume they'll still want Colin Lacey in the slot, so I don't know who that's going to be, over there. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I feel like I knew what they were trying to do last year, so I don't know about that one. I think they've done a really nice job with the offensive line, so adding some people that can help and some size and some depth. I like Miller Moss. I think he's good. I think he's really good, and I think Jeff loves a dude that's like, this is all I got. I got this 1 year. This is where I think Jeff most resembles Bobby. And this is where I try to see like the positives in Bobby.
There's some like small little
they're in there
positives. Yeah, you just got to find them.
Bobby's the best person in the history of football if there weren't people.
It was just like a video game.
If it was just tactics, robots. You are going to lose. It's the people part that. But Bobby, I came to see and understand, like he's a dick, but it's not just that. He's super serious about this, and he just doesn't have a millisecond for anybody who's not as serious about it as he is. Like I think that's Bobby in a nutshell. Like I'm trying to do something super freaking serious here, and you are laughing, or you are not looking. There's a former player that was are you gambling on this game?
Oh jeez.
like accused him of point shaving.
He's definitely said that to players before. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like that's Bobby.
Do you have money on this game?
And I think Jeff does have some of that in him, where he's like, guys, I thought we were gonna be serious about this. Like I see that in him.
Yeah, so going back, and I think that's honestly like, there's always a little part of me that's gonna love Bobby Petrino, because back when I was still in high school and looking at schools, like he actually, like, I wasn't gonna be a starred rated prospect or anything like that. I was on a visit hoping to go with a preferred walk-on, but like having the conversation with him, and at that point in my life, football was life and death. So I was right in that serial killer level of seriousness, so we were just vibing. So there's always that little part and then Craig came and that got washed out the window.
Cured.
So.
I remember when I asked him where the fullback meeting room was as a true freshman, because I mean Dave Bowler had told me, and Reggie for that matter, was like, you're going to play fullback, this is going to be great, awesome. I'm like, all right, cool. So I worked on that the entire offseason. I'm like, Coach Petrino, where's the fullback meeting room? Nobody mentioned anything about where fullbacks will go. It's like, fullback? You're a fucking linebacker. Get in the fucking linebacker room. I'm like, all right, okay.
So, there was one last thing we have to ask you before you get out of here. Very important question, very serious. Are you still going to eat a live animal if NC State makes the expanded playoffs?
Nope. That was this is a great opportunity to clear all the air here.
Can you clip this for him, Keith?
That was yes, please, yes. Let's make a promo out of this. That was a 1 year deal. And it really was just me trying to, the truth, like I was really just trying to bust Cole Kubelik's balls. Like that's really where this started. Cole's an offensive lineman. He's an offensive line lover. And that NC State team coming into that year had a really good offensive line. They were supposed to be really good. And he picked them as one of his 4 playoff teams. And we know that God doesn't let NC State have stuff.
No.
And so that I just replied to him, I was like, if they make the playoff, I'll eat alive. I was just trying to be like, NC State's not going to make the playoff. Cole, stop it.
What live animal? Like what live animal?
I would have done a goldfish. I would have done a goldfish for sure. Yeah, I would have done that.
Wolf of Wall Street did that thing. Just
nice frat party. Just yep.
No, so you got to go gourmet with it. Like,
by the way, they lost the opener.
Was that like Carolina. That was post Devin Leary too? NC State, is that what
no? This is 2017.
2017.
It was Ryan. Okay. I think it was Ryan Finley.
Ryan man.
Finley? I think it was Finley. I think. But they lost the opener in on a neutral field to South Carolina. I was like, man, I hadn't even made it in the building in Indianapolis. This was when they opened with Purdue. I hadn't even gone inside. I'd already won that bet. It is great.
See, I was thinking you got to treat yourself to like go on a trip to Japan and get puffer fish made for you if you're gonna do that.
make a whole thing out of it. Yeah, we could have made something out of it. It's a good lesson that I learned. Learn different things over this many years of doing the show and stuff. You never know like what is going to blow up. The things that you might say. Like I was just trying to be funny one day and telling guys, I was like, in the preseason, I don't really spend any time on the kickers. I find out who the kickers and punters are on opening day. Like
that's fair. And hopefully you don't have to figure out who the punter is till week 2.
Well, but now it's like Mark hates everybody on special teams. And I never knew it would take on a life of its own, but it does. It does. And you just got to go with it. And it's funny, the only people or the people who had the least reaction to me saying that were NC State fans. Like that's my favorite thing about that is they were like, yeah, that's right.
They were like, oh, you're going to eat a live
We will
animal?
Too.
What? That's Saturday.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, Joe Ovius, in Raleigh, used to be with I think 99.9, and now he does that podcast with Joe Giglio. He doesn't get, and this is great. Like you have no control over like where this stuff goes because he was much funnier than me. He was like, Mark, if they make the playoff, I'll let a live animal eat me. And I thought it was much funnier than what I said. But it like they knew I was right. The NC State fans are the funniest bunch of fans. I don't know that there's anybody else like them who actively believe like God is out to get them. Like, and they are suspicious of praise. And if good things happen, it's really just to make the fall harder. Like they really think that, and they're kind of right.
That is too funny.
As a Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Reds fan, I'm kind of right there with them.
I mean, you eating the live animal reminds me of Big Cat from Pardon My Take and his pinky bet he does every year. I think they start out like 0-3, and then he takes if they end up winning the Super Bowl, he has to cut off the tip of his pinky. And the Rams were his team. The Rams were his team this year, and this is the first year where he was like, I might have to cut off the tip of my pinky. Like I have kids. Like what am I doing? Yeah.
That's great.
And that is the perfect point to wrap this episode up. With me, as always, Vince Lococo, Matt McGavic. I don't know what happened to him. He just sort of disappeared about 2/3 of the way through.
Telling y'all he's AI for years.
It's a 40-minute game, Matt.
And of course, huge thanks to Mark Ennis joining us. You can find him on 93.9 The Ville, hosting The Drive, Monday to Friday, 3 to 6 p.m., right?
That's right.
So tune in to ESPN Louisville to find him there. And of course, I'm producer Keith. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode From the Pink Seats podcast. For the audio listeners, follow the feed. For the YouTube audience, beat that subscribe button like it owes you lunch money. Tickle the like, leave some comments. What live animal would you eat if Louisville makes the college football playoff?
I would eat Juan Soto if Louisville made the college football playoff.
And
I will do it.
So that'll do it for this episode. And as always, go Cards.